Hi, Coach Jeff here. Today, we're going to talk about the 3 best ways to buy a house without cash, not using any cash or a very minimal amount of cash, or worst case, use somebody else's money. But primarily, these are going to be no cash ways to purchase. So everybody knows the traditional, you put something under contract, you go to the title company, you write the check for $240,000 and then you buy the house. That is not something that I like to see you guys do. Even if you had the money, and in my case, I do have the money, but I prefer to always use some type of no money down, what we call transactional engineering way of buying. So the top 3, in my opinion, are buying subject to, buying through a lease option, and then buying with some form of seller finance. I'm going to break those down one at a time and kind of go through those with you. First one, buying subject to. Subject to means you are buying a house subject to the existing mortgage. In other words, you're going to get the ownership of the house, but you're going to leave the existing mortgage in place. Essentially, without getting into too much detail, it's as simple as the seller transfers the deed to you, and you do this through a title company. You can do this through your lawyer, all of these things, either a title company or your lawyer. The deed's transferred to you, but the deed of trust or the mortgage, the debt instrument, stays in the old seller's name. You pick up the payment coupon book and you just start making the payments directly to Bank of America or whoever it is. A lot of you guys would think, and you're probably thinking as I go through this, who in the world would do that? Who would give away their house but keep the debt in their name? A lot of people. Tremendous amount of people, especially people who don't have equity or not a ton of equity, people who have financial issues that they need to get out of quickly and they can no longer afford that house. You know, what we call motivated sellers, people with death, divorce, taxes, bankruptcy, job loss, medical issues, family issues, having to move. These kinds of things are those types of sellers. They're motivated sellers. They've got to sell because they can't afford it. They're more concerned about next month's $926.12 payment than they are about walking away from $20, $30, $40, $50,000 of equity. Because that equity they can't eat, but that $926 they're going to save from not making next month's payment is going to put a lot of food on their table and gas in their car. So they're looking for that. Now, don't be thinking that this is taking advantage of people, because I hear that as a kind of an offshoot of this strategy a lot. And that is absolutely not true, because these people are desperate. Their alternative is to turn the house back to the bank, to let it get foreclosed, or to essentially throw the keys back to the bank and say, here, take it. This allows you to help them by catching up their payments if they're in default, making their payments going forward in a timely manner so that as to keeping their credit high. And there's going to be a period of time in which you're going to pay off that loan, whether it's the full term of the loan or it's over a balloon period of time. Like, let's say they'll say, yeah, you can keep it in my name, but for 5 years. Okay, great. In 5 years, you'll have to have an exit strategy, and it might involve selling for cash and then cashing out the loan. The bottom line, though, buying property subject to has been done for years. It is an accepted practice. There's literally a section on the HUD-1 form that deals with the amount of mortgage that you are taking subject to. And there's a lot more details that we can get into, and we do that in our courses. But suffice it to say, that's number 1. Number 2, buying with a lease option. A lease option is simply leasing a house with the option to purchase it. There are 2 different documents. You have a rental agreement or a lease agreement, and then you have an option to purchase. Typically, the option to purchase will say, I'm going to purchase, or I have the right to purchase this house within the next 4 years or 5 years or whatever for X number of dollars. So let's say for the next 5 years, you have the right to buy that house for $180,000. And there's some language that are in our contracts, for example, that allows you to take advantage of the pay downs of that mortgage. But essentially, this is similar to a sub-to from a standpoint of the seller is kind of selling their house, but they're not. The deed stays in the seller's name. You're leasing it, making a rental payment, and you have this option to purchase it. Now, typically, we don't give more than 1 or 2% down as an option consideration, but you can turn right around and you can what's called sublease option, or it's called a sandwich option, which allows you to lease it to somebody and you to get an option from them. Typically, that option, 6 to 10% of the purchase price. So you make a spread up front. You're going to make a monthly spread ongoing during the term of that thing, and then you're going to get a chunk at the end. So it's a good way to help the seller out of a bad situation. They may be tired of having to deal with tenants and all that crap, and they may be tired of collecting payments and having to deal with all this. You can take care of all that stuff for them. Plus, your buyer is frequently somebody who's not today bank qualified, but needs a period of time to get so. So you put them into a credit repair program, you bring their credit up so that they can go to the bank, get a loan, cash you out. You can cash out your seller. You get a big chunk of money in your pocket. You made money up front, you made money during, you make money at the end. That's number 2. That's a good one. Third one is one that's been done forever, and it's basically a seller carryback situation. It is where the seller may own the home free and clear, or they may have very small amount of debt, but they're willing to carry the difference in exchange for a higher payment. So we use some language patterns, some scripting. In fact, we use a strategy called an inverse offer strategy, where the sellers make their offer to us, but some of the language patterns induce the right answer. So we'll say things like, I'd be willing to give you closer to your asking price if you're willing to wait for some or all of your equity. Would you be interested in listening to that? Because frequently these houses, especially in today's environment, need to be bought much cheaper. This allows you to pay closer to retail price or true value as it sits today on this house, and have the seller create paperwork that allows them to collect payment. It also puts them in a position of getting their payment over a period of time, which can function as an installment tax sale treatment for the sellers. In other words, they're not having to pay capital gains on the wholesale of the whole house at one time. They can pay taxes over a longer period of time at a smaller rate. It's a much better tax thing for them. It's great for you because you don't have to put up any money to buy the house, and you've got a house that comes with financing, which you can turn around. It's called wrap mortgage, or it's also called all-inclusive trust deed, AITD, and you can sell it with seller financing. You're wrapping the underlying mortgage, so your buyer pays you, you pay the seller, and everybody makes money. Once again, same kind of situation we talked about in the sub 2 and the lease option. You're helping a buyer who may not otherwise be bank qualified. You're helping a seller who really needs closer to the full price, but doesn't want to accept a big cash discount. They're willing to wait on their money because they understand the tax situation and the tax savings they're going to get by waiting for a period of time. So that's number 3. It's a really good way. Any of these 3 can be used and substituted from an all cash position. So there's a lot of techniques and there's a lot of ways to do that. If you want to go ahead and DM me, I will send you some information on how you go about doing those kinds of things. But go out there and make some money. You don't need cash.